The Soldiers of Ares, Chapter 35. Diomedes got off his chariot, and the fighting stopped for a minute. "What is this? The vermin is still alive." "As expected from you, woman," he said. His voice was loud and harsh, like he was gargling rocks. "Champion, these fighters are not," Captain Sharp began to say, but Diomedes shouted, "Silence! I don't want your excuses. Now where is the inventor?" "Still on the move, sir," Captain Sharp said. The barbarian went to his chariot and pulled on a latch. The leashes tying the horses to the chariot fell to the ground. The horses were free now, and the first thing they did was move to the fallen soldiers and start feeding on them. It was disgusting to watch, and Maximus wasn't even sure if all of them were dead. "Sir, those are our men," Captain Sharp said in shock. But Diomedes turned to her. "If they have fallen so easily in battle, then it is an embarrassment to call them the men of the war god. They shall serve well as horse food, though." And he said this with a grin. Captain Sharp fell to her knees and whispered, "How could you?" But Diomedes turned to the 5 remaining soldiers still standing and said, "Finish off this scum, or I'll personally feed you to my horses while you are all alive." The soldiers didn't need to be told this twice. They went ahead to attack Achilles. Diomedes then went to his horses, whose mouths were wet with blood now. "You can feed later, my pretties," he said. "Now go and hunt the old inventor. You have his scent, so bring him back to me alive. But you can snack on anyone else you find." The horses neighed at this, and they started running again in the direction in which the truck went. The barbarian king then went ahead to sit on his chariot to watch his soldiers face off against Achilles. Maximus was watching all this from a distance, and he felt like someone had replaced his blood with lava. It was like he was holding back from exploding. He felt so disgusted by the champion that he felt physically revolted by the man. His blade had begun to glow red again, brighter this time than ever before. It was now a bloody crimson, a color which reflected his emotions quite well, and at that moment the only thing he wanted to do was to drive his crimson blade straight into the barbarian king's heart. But Maximus had been so distracted by this that he had failed to see that the tank had fired at him. He would have been dead if Rex hadn't tackled him out of the way. "Max, listen, I know how you feel, and I know Diomedes does not deserve to live, but we have to leave him for now and concentrate on the bloody tank," Rex said. Maximus didn't say anything, but he nodded in agreement. Then together they went to face the tank again. The tank had gotten much closer now, and it showed no signs of stopping. Rex began to start firing at the tank with everything he had, but sadly it didn't even leave a dent. Its armor was simply too good. "What do we do now? My shots aren't working. Do you think that sword of yours could cut through its metal?" Rex asked. Maximus didn't know. He had seen Achilles cut through metal before, but he was in a completely different league than him. But Maximus was so angry, and his blade felt so powerful now, he knew he had to at least try. "I'll see if I can slow it down," he said. Rex nodded and said, "Listen, try and keep it occupied for a while. I got something that just might work against that thing, all right? But I can only use it once, so I need a clear shot." Maximus agreed and began to charge towards the tank. The ram tank kept firing at Maximus, but without any sort of armor slowing him down, he managed to dodge all of its shots. Finally, he was close enough to the tank to use his blade. As an added advantage, he was too close to the tank now for it to point its barrels at him. Maximus went ahead and started slashing at the tank's armor. The tank was still moving, but it was at such a slow pace that he could easily keep up with it. The only problem was the armored hull was too strong for his blade to make a scratch on it. From afar, Rex was still firing at the tank, but now the tank was concentrating its fire on him. There was no way he could get a clear shot for whatever he was planning while under such heavy fire. Then an idea sparked in Max's head. It was true that his blade could not cut through the metal alloy armor hull of the tank. But there was still one part of the tank that was not covered by it, its tires. With all his might, Maximus took a huge slash at the tread tires of the RAM tank. The tires were pretty thick as well, and an ordinary sword would never be able to cut through it. But his was no ordinary sword. His overheated blade slashed straight through the tank's tires, finally bringing the metal behemoth to a stop. Maximus thought that was it, but his troubles did not end there. The hatch at the top of the tank's hull opened, and a soldier popped out of it with a gun pointed straight at Maximus. Bang! A shot was fired, but Maximus was still standing. This was because it was Rex who had taken the shot before the soldier could pull the trigger. The soldier lay dead on the ground now, but Rex didn't stop there. He began to run straight at the tank as if he was going to meet it with a headbutt. As he got closer, he shouted, "Max, run!" Maximus had no idea what he was planning, but he decided to take his friend's advice and bolted away from the tank. As he turned back to see what was going on, he saw that Rex was aiming his head at the mouth of one of the tank barrels. Then he saw that a small red light was blinking on his metal horn. When he got close enough, the horn ejected itself towards the tank. It traveled like a miniature rocket, straight into its barrel, and Maximus heard beeping sounds coming from the inside now. After about 3 beeps, boom, a huge explosion occurred, and the tank was up in flames. The blast had blinded Maximus for a few seconds. But when he finally regained his sight, he saw that the entire tank was destroyed, and only its burning hull remained. It looked like Hephaestus had fitted Rex's horn with a mega bomb. Who knew? But Maximus had no time to celebrate as he saw Rex's body lying right next to the burning tank. It seemed he was too close to the tank and got caught in the explosion when it happened. Maximus ran to his friend, praying that he was still alive. He reached him and was relieved to see that he was still breathing. But he was still bleeding badly from a wound in his chest, and he needed some medical attention real soon. Maximus tore out a piece of his sleeve and used it to try and stop the bleeding. It had helped, but it was not enough. He dragged his friend's body away from the flaming wreckage, but he spent all his energy in doing so. He sat down next to Rex and did all that he could to try and cover up the bleeding wound. Behind all this, Diomedes was still sitting in his chariot. The tank explosion had distracted him for a few minutes, but he finally looked back at the fight with an annoyed expression on his face. Only the fight was over, and Achilles stood there with his bright blue blade surrounded by fallen soldiers of Ares. "Well, you really are something, aren't you?" Diomedes said. He still had no idea who Achilles was. His face was still not clearly visible in the darkness, and the only light now came from his blade. "Or maybe it's just that the ones chasing after you were utterly useless," he continued. He got off his chariot and walked up to Captain Sharp, who was still kneeling on the ground, clearly having lost her will to fight. "Bah, what use do I have with broken toys like you?" the barbarian said. He then drew his humongous battle axe and made a hack straight for the captain's neck. But the axe never made contact as it was swiftly blocked by a blue blade. As Achilles stood there defending Captain Sharp's life, he said, "Why don't you try that on someone who can fight back?" The blue glow from his blade was shining on his scar now, and the expression on his face was more dangerous than ever. It wasn't the unaffected, emotionless face he had before, or the expression of utter focus he had while fighting. What was seen on his face now was pure and unimaginable anger. This has been a chapter from Book 1 of the new World Odyssey series, The Soldiers of Ares. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.